You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode number 21 of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast here at AngryMarks.com, the number one source for pro wrestling and mixed martial arts news and information. My regular co-host Mike Poulin is on assignment this week, but to help me out is a very capable replacement. He's someone I've known forever. It's my old high school buddy Keith. Keith, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Rowan. It's great to be here and doing this podcast together with you, man.
So for those that don't know, which is all of you, Keith and I are old high school buddies. Now we're old decrepit men in our 40s, but hey, back in the day, we knew how to party when it came to, nitro parties and NFL parties and things of that nature. When did we meet? We met in what, I'm thinking it's like September of 92?
I'm sure it was probably going into grade 8 or something like that. It must have been just before high school, I would think.
The reason why Keith and I know each other so well is because I failed grade 9 the first time around, so way to go, Morris.
Hey, maybe it was grade 9 then. I was thinking it was junior high or something like that, but maybe it was, if you know better, if you failed grade 9, then that's when we met.
Only person in Morris McDonald School Division that took 7 years to complete high school.
Good times back in the day we had together, that's for sure.
I mean, most people were cool, but no one was make a cassette of Diamond Dallas Page's theme music and play it in your car cool.
Oh man, those are good times. Just hooking that, putting that cassette player in front of the TV and, audio recording from the television to a cassette. Background noise, mom's yelling in the background. That's always a good way to impress the ladies. And
oh, yeah. Nothing says, hey, ladies, we're single, like the Four Horsemen theme being blared through it. What were you driving? You were driving the
in high school, it would have been either in high school, it would have been my sister's Ford Fiesta with a pink stripe down the side.
Didn't you have like a Tercel at some point, or what was that?
I had a Honda Prelude, but that was only starting in college, I think. Okay. So that was like 96. I got the Honda Prelude. So
I definitely remember some road trips to the old Winnipeg Arena in the Prelude.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we did definitely hit up those house shows during the college years early on. Yeah.
So before we met, how much wrestling did you watch?
I probably would say quite a lot growing up. Up until my married life begun. So as a kid, I remember probably watching on TV as a kid Saturday mornings or whenever you would have like Stampede Wrestling or something like come on, I don't know, the CBC or something like that, one of the few channels we had. And you crossed your fingers and you hope that in the 1 hour of wrestling, you might see someone who's not just a ham and egger just jobbing there, and you might get like an actual name that you can watch. I remember my first live show my dad took me to when I was a kid. I don't remember much about it. I remember being on having floor seats, but at the very back. I remember the main event was Roddy Piper versus Ric Flair.
I was at that show.
I think a belt changed hands, but because it was in Winnipeg at a house show and there's no television, it didn't actually count. But I remember at that time, I loved Roddy Piper and I hated Ric Flair because I was young and stupid. But I mean, I think it's never stupid to love Roddy Piper, but hating Ric Flair, man, I look back at my younger years and how could I ever have done that? I don't know.
I think it was the fact that we didn't get WCW or NWA TV in our markets until summer of 94. But just like you said, I would get up Saturday and for the 5 channels that we had, you got the WWF syndicated shows that would play 3 times on Saturday. You get WWF Cavalcade, you get Superstars of Wrestling, and then some other weekend show would, again, it was just all jobber matches. And then, we might get to see the main event is a Virgil versus Skinner. Oh my God, we got two guys that aren't in the grand scheme of things.
That's a terrible example.
Oh man,
But you're right.
I'm not saying this to blow smoke or just because you're on the show. Legitimately, a lot of like my best childhood moments or teen moments as a wrestling fan have been with you, going to house shows, buying that second VCR so I could dub tapes.
Man, hey, I totally agree. Like, the fun we had going to some of those house shows in Winnipeg, the signs we made. Hey, when we started moving up in the world, going from like being in nosebleeds to like, let's get front row ringside so that we can high five wrestlers and, you know, they can see our signs and we can interact with them. That was such good memories for sure.
To this day, this is Techno Team 2000 country. It still radiates with me.
Oh man, we were like the only guys cheering for Hunter Hearst Helmsley before he became Triple H.
Yeah, we're the only ones cheering for Billy Gunn. Remember the Techno Team 2000 sign? We got a pop from the Headbangers, so we made them laugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a high five.
I loved Billy Gunn back in the day, and then there was
a
time.
Billy Gunn.
Absolutely, I was a huge Billy Gunn fan, and I was living in Dauphin, Manitoba, or just outside of there. I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago, and they had a house show up there, and he was the big draw. And I was like making peanuts at the time. I had no money to spend on anything. It was hard enough for me to spend the $20 to go to this event on this ticket. I had no extra cash. And he was there selling his wares and trying to get people to like pay to take pictures with him and stuff like that. I'm like, you know, I couldn't do it. He just like totally sassed me for not giving him money. And I just like, dude, I loved you growing up. Like, I was your biggest fan, and now you're sassing me because I got no money to give you. And
sorry, but I spent all my money on this ticket. I got nothing for the merch table here.
I kind of told him that.
I think I told you there was a certain, after high school I was working for one of the local companies here, just sort of like being like a gopher, and one of my jobs was to go to the airport and bring the quote unquote I'm using air quotes here, people, but you can't see it. To bring the quote superstar or the draw from the airport. And I won't say who it is, but he was a former WWF guy, and he had a bird with him all the time. That's all I'm going to say. But I picked him up from the airport, and the very first thing he said was, "Where can I get some cocaine?"
Did he wear colorful outfits by chance?
No. I said too much. What we're going to be talking about here today, ladies and gentlemen, is the 1992 Royal Rumble. And
the greatest wrestling event of all time, according to me.
I think you and I have probably referenced this particular event so many times that it's just become part of our regular vernacular.
It was basically the high school lingo for us from the time it happened, right through graduation in 1996. Oh, we're dating ourselves there, but and probably even into, you know, post high school times, just you know, messaging, or, you know, I didn't even message. I guess when we hung out together or talked on the phone, because there was no texting or Facebook at that time.
When we had our ICQ.
Yeah. So many Bobby Heenan quotes, so many things that we referenced for so many years.
Yeah, and I think this particular event was probably one of the pinnacles of not only Ric Flair, well, spoiler alert, Ric Flair is prominent on this show, but also Bobby Heenan. I think this is one of the shows that probably defined him as a commentator for me. This, to me, was some of his best work.
Absolutely. I right from the get-go, in rewatching the show, it had been a number of years since I'd seen it, and rewatching it again just to kind of get myself ready to talk about it, I was floored right off the bat. I was like, man, like, I miss that level of announcing. I mean, I haven't really watched wrestling at all the last few years in my life now. I probably did up until the time when my son was a little younger. Now he's a teenager. He's not really into it, but man, I miss the guys with the mic skills, both whether it's in the ring or the announcers that can just really make you laugh and just carry the show.
It's a good thing that you're not watching the current product, because the state of the announcing, not only in WWF or WWE, but just in the wrestling scene in general, has just become so homogenized and pasteurized, and now it's I don't even know how to explain it. You need to watch it for like an extended period of time and then go back and see some of these old shows with and even Gorilla at the time, he was not considered a very good announcer, but by today's standards, the guy was who's a good announcer now.
It's not Joe Buck, I can tell you that.
Okay, good. We can fix this in editing. So let's set the stage here. First, before we begin, I sent you a link to the files. Now, you are not a WWE Network subscriber, so you did not watch the network version of this. You watched what was at the time the WWF 24, WWE 24/7, which used to be their old streaming service before they got the WWE Network. So I sent you links to this. In the interest of fairness, I also watched that same version because I know that there were a couple of edits between the 24/7 version and the network version. And the very first thing I noticed when I started watching this is the very opening, these classic Royal Rumble openings, you used to get Vince McMahon coming out, "It's time to rumble! It's time for the Royal Rumble!" But we didn't get that. We had Gene Okerlund running through the list of participants, and they didn't have that Royal Rumble theme music that everyone in the 90s loved so much. I'm already taking a full star off of this event because of that.
That's some rough critique, but I'll, you know what? I don't recall some of that, you know, like the old entrance stuff to the shows like that. So I'm just gonna absolutely just yield to your expertise when it comes to that introduction to the show.
And another thing I noticed that every time they would mention WWF, the F was edited out, because on the 24/7 version, they had just lost the lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund, who won the rights to those letters. So anything that they were putting out, you couldn't say WWF.
As that was the reason. When I was watching, I did notice that they did say World Wrestling Federation, but they would not say WWF.
I wrote a million notes here. So Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, as we talked about, are our announcers. This is Sunday, January 19th, 1992, from the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. So I don't believe that's still the name of the arena. It's probably got some...
I wouldn't think so.
I'm sure it's probably got some corporate name on it. Hey, the Knickerbocker Arena in this...
Preparation H Arena.
Whatever happened to preparations A through G?
Those were failed tests.
So they immediately start talking about a recap of the Mountie beating Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title 2 days previous, and we're going to have a story about that. Our opening match is the Orient Express of Tanaka and Kato, neither of which are Oriental, versus the New Foundation of Jim the Anvil Neidhart and the re-debuting Owen Hart. So this was the first pay-per-view match for Owen Hart since he left WWF in April of 1989. And I don't know about you, but anytime you throw the word new in front of something wrestling related, it always sucks. They had the new Blackjacks, they had the new Midnight Express and the new Rockers, and this just followed suit as the New Foundation. It's like, hey, we got Neidhart, and we got Bret's little brother. What are we going to do? We'll call him the New Foundation, because that'll get over.
It's brand new. We've never seen it before.
So the Orient Express music was also redubbed on this. I don't know if you remember the Orient Express's first, original music, but this was not it. This was just, a bunch of drum solos. I wish we could play music on this show, but we can't because I'll get tagged, so we can't play the actual Orient Express theme music, but go and listen to it. If you're watching it on the network, I think it was there. On this version, it was not. And then,
I think we could probably get away with playing the Nasty Boys theme song if all we would need to do is just zip up and zip down our jackets really quickly. We could get that theme song, and it would not be copyright.
Well, I'm also going to have a Nasty Boy story, too.
Right on.
So New Foundation music cannot be appreciated without seeing the checkerboard hammer pants, as you see Anvil and Owen Hart just walk down. And, if you were a fan at this era, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was like lime green, taxi cab checkerboard. Heenan would make fun of their pajamas all the time. And
he did, absolutely. It was they were bad, and they did look like my kids' pajamas, and Heenan did make a comment about it.
If you think about it, it was 1992. MC Hammer was probably at his peak right now. To me, they're grasping onto a piece of pop culture and they're making it work for them. So we get Gorilla Monsoon. He's going to run through the replacements in the Royal Rumble. We've got Marty Jannetty, who is out because of the barbershop incident that happened 6 days prior. And then we have Brian Knobbs of the Nasty Boys, who they just say was a shoulder injury. But I have a scoop here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you were aware of this, Keith, but A couple days prior, they were in Peoria, Illinois, and it was the Nasty Boys and IRS. They were traveling to whatever building that they were going to, and apparently some young punks, some stooges, started throwing garbage at them in the car. They pulled over, and Knobbs ended up getting into a scuffle with 3 guys in his car, and ended up getting stabbed like 4 times. So he was taken off the show.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
If you're a subscriber, the January 20th, 1992 Wrestling Observer newsletter has a very lengthy article about this. I won't get into everything here. But yeah, basically he was taken off the show because he was stabbed and he was in intensive care trying to cling to life. I don't know how close he was or how serious it was, but it was serious enough that he wasn't able to compete for the WWE title on this night. So
that's
those
wild.
2 guys are being replaced with Nikolai Volkov and Haku.
They were the highlight of the match for me, by the way.
What a difference this makes. So back to the tag match. So we get Owen and Kato to start. Owen has a lot of acrobatic moves that they hadn't really seen at this point. He was working in Japan for quite a while, so a lot of the Japanese influences were coming across. Aside from Ric Flair and maybe Shawn Michaels, I think Owen had the best performance of the night. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought he did pretty well. One thing that really stood out to me, though, was maybe it's just memory is fading in my advancing years here, but man, Owen Hart was much thicker than I ever remember him being. Like, he came out, I'm like, that dude's big. Like, I always just remember him as being smaller and perhaps more agile, but he was looking pretty thick all the way across the board, and so that kind of surprised me a little bit.
And that's even with him standing next to Neidhart.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Neidhart was big maybe in a different way. He had a gut on him. He was muscular, but I get, like I said, it could have just been memory. I don't know, but I always just have this memory of Owen Hart being more quick and agile. And when he came out, I was like, wow, he's actually quite built muscularly. I never remembered him that way.
I think he did trim down quite a bit over his tenure here. So he's doing a lot of crazy acrobatic stuff with Tanaka early. Anvil tags in and just starts bullying Kato with power moves. Owen hits a high cross off the top on both Orient Express guys. Gorilla and Heenan, they start ignoring the match, and they talk about Brett losing the Intercontinental title with a 104-degree fever, according to the storyline.
Man, Heenan would have wrestled with 116, though, so Brett, I don't know, it's no excuse.
Brett's such a pussy, right? And it's like, I wrestled with 113. I took some children's Bayer, and I was fine afterwards. I had a bit of a tummy ache, but
oh yeah, it's so good.
So Orient Express, they get the heat on Owen with Mr. Fuji jabbing Owen in the neck with the cane. We get our first Fair to Flair reference by Heenan.
Absolutely, I caught that right off the bat. I'm like, I wonder how many times it's going to be said during the broadcast.
How many times was it said during our 4 years of high school?
I can't even count that. At one point in time after high school, Hotmail.com came out, and I thought that was a dumb-sounding name for an email. So I found a little website called Mail.com. I thought, well, that sounds way cooler than Hotmail. I know what I'm going to do that's going to be really cool. I'm going to create an email account called Not Fair to Flair at Mail.com, and I used that for a number of years. And so the phrase Not Fair to Flair was said many, many times between you and I, and then later on, me as an adult telling people my email address.
I believe it was said so much that the amount cannot be represented by numbers.
Absolutely not.
Gorilla Monsoon says, just like the Midnight Express, the Orient Express will be hard to derail. And in that time, there was some chatter. Then there was a brief pause in the announcing, and I've come to learn that at that point, Vince McMahon was yelling at the announcers in their headset not to mention the Midnight Express. So Gorilla Monsoon apparently was unaware that in the NWA there was a very popular tag team called the Midnight Express, and God forbid should you advertise the competition on your pay-per-views. But I think Monsoon was referring to the Train, not the WCW tag team. So poor Gorilla couldn't.
That's how I understood it. As a fan watching, that's how I understood it. Not as WCW.
So Express continued to work over Owen with frequent tags. Owen finally makes a tag to Anvil, but the ref doesn't see it. So while the ref is getting Anvil out, Fuji conveniently hangs his cane in the corner, and Orient Express whips Owen into the corner shoulder first. And I love how Bobby's monitor always conveniently just blacked out whenever the heels were cheating. That was one of the great hallmarks of Bobby's commentary. It's like,
Absolutely.
Oh, what happened there? My monitor just went up for a second. And then Gorilla would go, will you stop?
He won't, by the way.
No, he never will. Owen hits this beautiful belly-to-belly off the ropes on Tanaka. I always loved that move. And Owen finally gets the hot tag. Anvil slingshots over the top rope, tackles both Express. Kato gets knocked to the outside. Owen hits a what they just called a dive, but he had done some work in Mexico, so that was a tope suicida for you Lucha Libre fans out there. Back in the ring, Anvil slams Tanaka, and the New Foundation hit the rocket launcher, which, well, speaking of the Midnight Express, that was their finishing move back in the day. So the rocket launcher is just basically a splash from the top by Owen while Neidhart raises his arms, pretending to launch him.
I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade or finishing maneuver, but I wrote in my notes, Owen Hart finisher is a splash off the top rope, LOL. And in disbelief, the match was over with that maneuver. While
Anvil lifts him by the chest and the crotch.
I don't think he actually made any physical contact with Owen on the replay. It was the camera angle was not good if they're trying to sell that maneuver.
So they get the win at 17 minutes and 18 seconds. And this whole segment, I think it was just a showcase for Owen. At the previous year's Rumble, they had a very awesome tag match opener with the Orient Express and the Rockers. And that was probably one of the best tag matches of this era. Now, this was the New Foundation's only major win, as Neidhart was fired from the company a few weeks later for refusing to take a drug test.
Fancy that. So, I never would have believed that.
Now we go to a video recap of Bret losing the IC title to the Mountie 2 days earlier. Mountie does this post-match beatdown. Piper comes in and makes a save, but then Mountie bonks Piper with the belt too. Now the backstory on this is that Bret Hart was quietly having negotiations with WCW at the time.
I was actually going to ask, how did Mountie get the belt? I mean, was this win over a sick Bret Hart planned? Was it an accident? Did he accidentally get the pinfall? What was going on there?
Well, back in the summer of 1991, when Flair was brought in, Bret was pissed because he thought that his time as a single star was going to be pushed back because of Flair's arrival. So Bret thought that his contract had expired, and he had actually made a deal to appear at WCW's Clash of the Champions show, which was scheduled for the following Tuesday after the Rumble in Topeka, Kansas. WCW wanted Bret to show up on their TV with the Intercontinental title as a way to get revenge for Flair showing up on TV with their world title. As if you recall, when Flair first came in, he had with him the NWA or the WCW world title. And how it worked in the NWA is when you were going to be the champion, the WCW office made all their talent put down a $25,000 deposit on this title belt. So you'd pay your money, you'd go, you'd have your match, you'd win the belt, whatever, you would carry on. Once you're ready to lose the title, they would give you your deposit back. But Flair, having won and lost the title so many times, he just never bothered to reclaim his deposit. I think how it goes is when in the summer of 91, WCW had a new head of creative, and they wanted to cut a bunch of contracts. So Flair had this existing contract, and they were going to cut it by 50%. And when he refused, that's when they just decided to fire him while he was still the champion. So he takes the belt, tells Vince McMahon, hey, this is my situation. Vince is like, well, goddamn, pal, bring the belt to TV.
Absolutely.
I guess they figured that WCW would get back at WWF by stealing Bret Hart and their Intercontinental title. Now, the difference here is that Flair was fired and Bret didn't know how to read his contract. And he didn't realize that his contract had rolled over, and he wasn't able to get out of his contract until October of that year. WWF, seeing the writing on the wall, I'm pretty sure that they had actually told Bret back in December that he was going to lose the title, just so they could build to Bret and Roddy Piper at WrestleMania. So, read your contracts, everyone.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We then get Sean Mooney interviewing the Mountie and Jimmy Hart, and Mountie has his trusty shock stick, and Sean Mooney, always the professional, he has a pun ready to go to talk about this shocking situation. Sean Mooney is my kind of announcer.
You know, when they first cut to Sean Mooney, I was like, okay, I know all the other guys. Who's this guy? And like literally, I think it was maybe sometime after this match, before or after the third match on this card, they say, okay, we're going to cut to Sean Mooney, and Bobby Heenan's who? And I just started laughing because I literally said the same thing to myself like the match earlier. Who is this guy? And yeah, why is he on my screen?
Well, he always ran the event centers on the syndicated shows.
I just didn't remember him. I guess Lord Alfred Hayes was sad, but I remembered him. But Sean Mooney, I just did not stick in the old memory banks there. So
Mountie asks President Jack Tunney, who has Piper beaten to get a title shot? Which is a legit question. Like, what is his record that he has earned himself a prestigious shot at this Intercontinental title? And then he zaps the cattle prod at the camera.
And I thought to myself, again, maybe this is from a little bit of watching some new wrestling. I mean, a few years back when I finished watching, but my thought was after the Mountie was done talking was like, wow, even these scrub level guys can cut a decent promo.
I don't think there was anyone in that era who enjoyed their character more than the Mountie. He loved being the Mountie.
Absolutely.
So with an opposing view, we've got Gene Okerlund, who's backstage with Roddy Piper. And I don't know what sort of substance Piper was on, but he was making some veiled gay jokes and some wet dream jokes, and he called the Mountie one of the original Village People.
It was wild. That was a wild promo for sure.
Yeah. So, sets us up for the Intercontinental title match, the Mountie, the champion, versus Roddy Piper. And first of all, the Mountie he also does not have his I'm the Mountie music, and that saddened me greatly. He had the symphony music or just
it was weird.
It sounded like the music that you would have if you were doing like a sleep meditation.
Again, would you say is that because of the version that we watched that was kind of changed that way?
No, because I actually went to the network version, and that was also the same.
Okay.
It was the same version. I don't think he started using that until about the summer of '92. But then he got into some legal issues with the RCMP up here in Canada, because apparently you're not allowed to impersonate a police officer in Canada, even if it's for parody reasons. So he was never allowed to be called the Mountie when he came to Canada. He had to just be called Jacques Rougeau.
Canadians, eh?
We just ruined everything. I
thought we were supposed to be nice people.
Right. So the Fink introduces the Mountie being from Canada.
Yeah, just Canada.
Yeah. Well, it's like South Park, downtown Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, like Piper's also from Canada, but
that's very true.
So Piper attacks the Mountie at the bell. Mountie tries to bail, but Piper gives chase on the floor. He brings him back into the ring, hits Mountie with a running bulldog. Mountie avoids Piper's dropkick attempt. I have never seen Roddy Piper hit a dropkick. Why is he using this unproven method of offense? I don't understand.
Just keep going. You keep trying, I guess. Eventually he'll hit it.
Mountie has Piper. This is a great spot. So Mountie has Piper in a half Nelson. I know you don't have any big brothers, but I do. So he's got Piper in a half Nelson, and he waddles him over to the corner, and he just starts slamming his head in the top turnbuckle. This is totally something that my big brother would have done to me. It was the equivalent of him grabbing my own hands and like, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself.
I currently have a 16-year-old son who's quickly getting stronger than his father, so I will still apply this maneuver from time to time. One thing I did notice when this match begun, though, was that the crowd seemed a lot more up for this one than the first one. The first one, they seemed really subdued, and maybe it's just Roddy Piper. Maybe he just has the effect on the crowd, but they definitely seemed a lot more vocal in this match.
I think one thing Piper does bring a very lively energy, and Mountie was such a great heel. Like in the opening match, the Orient Express, they're not really over as heels. They're just kind of they're placeholders in the tag team division. Plus the fact that this match only went about 6 minutes, so that's another thing. Piper throws Mountie over the top rope. Mountie holds on, skins the cat, gets back in the ring. Piper is distracted. We've seen this finish a million times. Mountie runs at him. Piper moves, hits Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart takes a bump. Piper clamps on the laziest looking sleeper you've ever seen. The ref checks the arm. It drops 3 times. And Piper is declared the winner and the new Intercontinental Champion at 5 minutes and 22 seconds.
Okay, so I grew up in the era of Hulk Hogan was cool and every young boy should cheer for him. And, I remember Hogan getting sleepers put on him, and it never worked. And I was watching this match, and the match is now over, and Piper, who I've loved always, I've never not liked Roddy Piper, I'm sitting there looking at my screen thinking, Piper won the belt with a sleeper? When has this move ever worked? And he just won a championship match with it? I was totally floored.
He would go on to actually beat Hogan with a sleeper in WCW later on.
I'd probably just black that out.
Well, that whole era of WCW should be blacked out. Now that I've said this,
yeah, I found two finishers in a row, and again, maybe it's just champagne goggles as my memory glasses or something like that. The splash off the top rope and then the sleeper as like the two consecutive finishers. I was just rather underwhelmed by that.
They're two of like the safest, most non-exciting finishes that I've seen in a long time. This was Piper's only title that he ever won in WWF, but this match was really it was just part of a bigger story with Piper vying for two titles in one day. Mm-hmm. We get a backstage interview. It's a Coliseum home video exclusive with Lord Alfred Hayes, who is a favorite here at Angry Marks Rewind. It's a Coliseum home video, and he's standing outside Hulk Hogan's dressing room. And do you know how we know that this is Hulk Hogan's dressing room?
Well, there was a sign on the door.
There's a big sheet of printer paper taped to the door that just says Hulk written on it. And Lord Alfred...
I did get a kick out of that.
Lord Alfred just invites himself in. He doesn't knock. He just walks in, and Hulk's like, "Oh, Lord Alfred, how are you?" And it's not your standard Hogan promo. It's very quiet. It's very reserved. Hogan's like, "Oh, I have lots of friends in the Coliseum home video people. They're my friends, but I won't have any friends out there. Oh, no. So you'd better leave now." And I'm positive that he didn't do the whole, what you gonna do, brother, because he is in the presence of a fine English gentleman like Lord Alfred. So
absolutely, with that red bow tie and everything.
There is a level of class that you need to bring if you're being interviewed by Lord Al. And then we get Mean Gene Okerlund backstage with your favorites, the Bushwhackers and Jameson. Do you remember Jameson?
Very, very vaguely. Bushwhackers, absolutely. But I think I actually saw one of them wrestle in Morden here, like in Morden, Manitoba, like a few years ago, and my son was just at that age where he still was interested enough I could take him to go see it. But I don't. Jameson, not really so much, but the Bushwhackers definitely. They were a group I liked as a kid, anyways.
If you ever get a chance, look up the Sheep Herders. So before the Bushwhackers came to WWF, they were called the Sheep Herders in NWA, and they were a vicious heel tag team they were bloodthirsty and they were violent and they were so great. And then they become these cartoon characters that Vince just changes over. And I completely forgotten about Jameson. He's this Woody Allen ripoff.
Yes, absolutely.
How would you describe Jameson's wardrobe?
I mean,
did he not look? He looked like the skinniest homeless guy you've ever seen.
Yeah, he had a sock in his pocket, but he wiped his mouth with it and his nose with it, and it was a disaster. I did not understand what was going on there. I understand the genius. I don't understand Jameson.
Apparently, the guy who played Jameson was a stand-up comic, and Vince saw him one time at some dinner theater and thought that he was like the greatest thing and said, "Hey, let's bring him in." And they brought him in and they put him with the Bushwhackers, and he lasted maybe a couple of months, maybe a month.
I couldn't tell if they were are they trying to make fun of someone with an intellectual disability in some way? It was just, for me, it felt a little bit like, is this character really necessary?
Vince does seem like the kind of person if somebody, the whole reason the IRS character was developed was because he was having legitimate issues with the IRS. And so what better way to make fun of them than I'm going to make a bad guy wrestler that is a tax agent. That'll show you. So,
but who doesn't love Erwin R. Shyster? I mean, come on.
I know, right? And this was around the time where every wrestler had a second job. So you had like the Big Boss Man was a prison guard. It around like 94, 95, it became just over the top with the secondary jobs. You had like the race car driver and the clown and the garbage man and the hockey player and
oh boy, the hockey player. What was his? The Goon? Was that his name?
Yes. Complete
with his wrestling boots that looked like skates.
Exactly. God, the things that we remember that should have just Mantar. Do you remember Mantar?
Very, very vaguely.
He's a big fat guy with a cow head. So, okay.
Oh man, Vince McMahon.
They're in the middle of a wrestling war with WCW, and this is what they decide to put out. Anyways, back to the Bushwhackers versus the Beverly Sisters. What a sick burn.
Oh man, and they kept going back to that well over and over again.
Yeah, apparently, if you're the Beverly Brothers, you're sissies and you're gay and you're the Beverly Sisters. And I think the less said about this match, the better. This is if this show ever needed a screeching halt sound effect, this was it.
Oh man, I think I took the most notes on this one.
That's because this went 15 minutes.
It was a disaster. I mean, okay, first of all, the Bushwhackers, they come out and they're licking children's faces.
What is with these parents that are okay?
Parents are giving these men with no front teeth their children to lick them on the face, and everyone is cheering them on.
I once saw Bushwhacker Luke at an indie show take a piss on a high school, like in the back of like a high school gym, and then didn't wash his hands, and then started giving high fives to all the local yokels. But no, these parents, these grown adult men, who, first of all, if you're bringing like a 3-year-old to a wrestling event, what the hell's wrong with you? Maybe back in 1992 it was considered tame, but now why would you do that? And they're holding up these children. Hey, Butch, lick my child's head. Like,
it was wild.
The Bushwhackers would not go over well in the era of COVID-19. That's for damn sure.
No, I mean this match itself. One of my notes is this is terrible.
That is putting it lightly.
It's literally. It was just messing around, hardly any actual wrestling. The crowd just died down after Piper. And you're right, it went on forever, and it was like, what's going on here?
It took forever for the Bushwhackers to actually start the match. They just kept licking each other's head, and they were waving they were doing their little Bushwhacker salute or their walk. Grown men were doing the Bushwhacker march.
I think I did, but I was probably like 10, so you can forgive me for that.
So finally the match starts, and they get the heat on Luke right away. Bushwhackers make a very brief comeback with your typical Bushwhacker comedy spots. They're biting on the ass, the licking. The Genius is on the floor, bad-mouthing Jameson on the outside. And then Gorilla Monsoon says, hey, he can't hurt you with words. Clearly this was before Twitter. And Heenan's burial of Jameson throughout this match was just so funny. Just, look at that pig, he just said with such disdain.
Absolutely. Heenan was the only good part of this match, I think.
This was the part of the show where I actually got up and I went to go do other things. I left the show running. I went to go get a drink. I changed my laundry. I prepared my taxes. I did a full family genealogy. I questioned all my life choices. So
I went over and licked the neighbor's kid for a while.
As one does.
Wait, edit that one out. Too much Bushwhackers on my screen.
So this match goes for days. I think it still could be going on right now. I'm pretty sure the Knickerbocker Arena is still open. These 4 men are still going at it. I don't know if any 4 of them are dead or not.
They're just going around and around the ring, waving their arms up and down in that march. I don't know.
And I've seen a lot of great tag team matches in my day with some great dramatic finishes with awesome moves. You know, you had the Road Warriors with their finishing moves. Power and Glory had an awesome finisher. The Beverly Brothers won this match via double axe handle. What an offensive flurry.
Yeah,
I don't know who.
Yeah, it was terrible. As I watched this match, I'm like, why is it that the 1992 Royal Rumble is the greatest wrestling event of all time? Have I been wrong all these years? What's going on?
And it's because of
wait, don't leave the podcast yet. There's good stuff coming.
This is why I should have formally apologized to you firsthand, because 2 days ago you asked me if I wanted you to watch the whole show or just the Rumble, and like a fool, I said no, let's watch the whole show.
Absolutely. I think the Rumble itself I had seen many, many, many times. The whole show probably, maybe a couple of times, and I think I blacked out all these undercards, and now watching them again, I'm like, what is Rowan making me do here? This is insane.
Like you and I have not hung out in person for a long time. I don't hate you to the point where I purposely asked you to watch this just because I had this vitriol for you. I should also mention that Keith was the best man at my wedding, and for those that know me and know how that turned out, maybe that's why. Maybe I'm going to blame it on you. So this match went 14 minutes and 56 seconds, and the post-match was just as bad as the match itself. Even though the Bushwhackers lost fair and square via the rules of the match, they attacked the Beverly Sisters after, they hold the Genius, and then they wave Jameson to come into the ring. And this whole time, poor Genius, I got a lot of respect for Lanny Poffo, but him having to sit there and sell for Jameson while being held forever, Jameson takes forever to finally get in the ring. He does the big fist wind-up. It's like, I'm going to get you. And he can't even make a fist, and Bobby Heenan points this out. The thumb is on the inside of the fist. I
audibly laughed out loud at Bobby Heenan's comment about he can't even make a fist.
He does this great big wind-up and then just ends up kicking Genius in the shins. Poor Genius had to bump for Jameson. I hope Genius got like a little extra bonus in his check that month. There is no excuse for these two teams going 15 minutes. This was wretched.
Absolutely.
Then we cut to Mean Gene backstage. God, this undercard was just horrible. We get to cut to the Legion of Doom, who must be thinking, oh, we get to follow that.
Well, it couldn't get any worse. So, I mean, surely they're gonna put over on here, knowing they're gonna come out and get the crowd fired up after that stink fest.
It can only go up from here, right?
Absolutely.
So they're interviewing Legion of Doom. Animal says, we're not going to be closet champs. We're going to take on everyone. And my first thought was, I'm guessing the Bushwhackers are not getting a title shot anytime soon. And then Hawk says, we're going to have your... Okay. Hawk has a history of very strange promos that leads me to question exactly what he was on. He says, your tongues are going to be hanging out like a bunch of dead deers. Like, those are fighting words.
Does he not realize that deers is not the plural of deer?
We're going to shave you like some sheeps.
Oh, yes. No, as a kid growing up, for as long as I can remember, Legion of Doom was one of my favorite tag teams. I think I answered a Twitter poll once before about, like, who is your favorite tag team of all time? And I think I even wrote the Road Warriors, and someone's like, hey, wasn't that Legion of Doom? I was like, I think it was. My memory is just like combining these two names here. So absolutely loved these guys growing up as a kid, and so I was excited to see a match with them.
Well, tell him, Hawk. So we got four big guys trying to do power spots. Hawk and Typhoon are just exchanging shoulder blocks, trying to see who's going to blink first, and Hawk knocks him down with a top rope clothesline a minute into the match. And then Earthquake tags in, and Earthquake... I don't want to speak ill of the deceased, but what the hell was he thinking? He tries a standing dropkick on Hawk, and he's moving at the speed of Continental Drift, and Hawk just leisurely walks out of the way, and Monsoon just buries Earthquake for taking such a stupid risk. He would hit Skylo Low with that one.
I think I could have dodged that dropkick. It was so slow.
Heenan comes back mocking Legion of Doom's hair. It's like, that's a great haircut if you're going to the chair.
The Natural Disasters had quite the flows going there for sure.
The
mullets.
Mullet mania was running wild here in the...
The Beverleys, the Disasters, they all had just greasy mullets.
Do you remember Crush?
Yes. Absolutely.
I think he was the king of the mullets. Let's see here. So Hawk tries a cross body block on Typhoon, and Typhoon just catches him, and he just curls with him while giving him backbreakers. I thought, that's a pretty impressive feat. What was less impressive was the standing bear hug. And then Earthquake comes in, and he just steps on Hawk's chest. That's a great spot. Hawk is just lying flat on his back, and Earthquake's like, F this guy, and I'm just going to, like, walk on his chest.
I can tell you, my son's a teenager. I think he weighs probably 130 pounds. I don't even know if I want him stepping on me, though. So, like, I can't imagine what it's like to have a guy that's however, heavy those dudes were step on you. It's not a great wrestling maneuver, but I don't think I wouldn't volunteer to lay in the ring and have some guy put all those weight on my chest like that.
Hey, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do in the match, okay? Hawk, you're going to lie down, and I am 500 pounds, and I'm going to step on your chest cavity, the layer of skin closest to your heart, and going to put all of my weight on there, and hopefully, your ribs do not dissolve into dust.
He probably promised that he would take a big breath, inhale before he did it to make himself lighter. So
there's a four-way brawl that ensues on the floor. They go down the aisle. Typhoon realizes we're going to lose. So out of all four of these guys, the voice of reason is Tugboat, who sprints back to the ring and beats the count. And the Natural Disasters win by countout at approximately 9.5 minutes.
Again, I'm flabbergasted by the finish of yet another match.
We're going to give you
the greatest wrestling event of all time, again, per Keith Friesen. And every match is ending what is going on here? Who did somebody decide this? Was this done randomly? Was this I've seen guys getting hit with steel chairs. I know wrestling hurts, but I know, things are predetermined and things like that. And I'm like, who's predetermining these finishers for all of these matches? It just blew my mind, this count out.
Nobody can see this except me, but Keith is waving his arms in the air. I can't believe it. This finish on this match that happened over almost 30 years ago. I'm so despondent, and I'm going to show my rage.
I have been emotionally invested in this wrestling event for a very long time, and to now go back and have my beautiful memories desecrated in such a way at all of these finishing maneuvers. I mean, the event itself is fine. I'm not downplaying it, but wow, I was just underwhelmed at the end of every match so far.
So Natural Disasters grab the belts. They think they've won. They've been in this business for decades, and they've forgotten the rules, and you cannot win the belts on a countout. Legion of Doom attack them with chairs, and they get the belts back.
Jimmy Hart was going to call his lawyer, though.
Oh, we've got a great interview with the Disasters afterwards. Backstory on Legion of Doom here. We get this show is just full of information, ladies and gentlemen. So Vince, at the time, he wanted to bring back Paul Ellering, who was Legion of Doom's manager when they were in the NWA. And with it came this ventriloquist dummy, Rocco. Do you remember Rocco?
I do not know.
Well, okay. So around November, December of 1991, Vince says, hey, I want to bring back Paul Ellering. I have this idea. Let's put you with this ventriloquist dummy. And Legion of Doom thought this was a dumb idea, and it was. And as punishment for balking the idea, less than 3 weeks later, they would lose the tag titles to Money Incorporated at a house show in Denver, only to be brought back in April with Ellering later on. So they would leave the company for about a month and then come back and re-debut at WrestleMania 8 in April with Paul Ellering and the dummy. So the lesson here is don't argue with Vince, kids, because 9 times out of 10, Vince is going to get his way.
Absolutely. No, cannot do that.
So this was when the show went from sucky to awesome. And
absolutely.
We get promo after promo after promo of all these guys explaining why they're going to win the Rumble. But beforehand, we go back to Sean Mooney with the Natural Disasters. I'm already...
Who? As Bobby Heenan would say?
Sean Mooney and the Natural Disasters, out of breath, mad, loud grunting interview. It's every stereotypical mean guy, ugly, fat dude promo who just felt that they got robbed, complaining that they should be the champions. And I'm going to do my best to try and recreate the interview.
Oh my goodness.
We should be the champions. We got our arms raised in victory.
Lawyer. Lawyer.
Meanwhile, Jimmy Hart's screaming, I had to call my lawyer. Oh, I'm sweating.
Not as much as they were.
It's like poor Earthquake. He probably just wanted to go take a shower and go to catering and just go back to the hotel. But no, you need to cut this promo saying how our arms were raised in victory. Speaking in a tone that no normal person would ever say. Okay.
Yeah.
We cut back to Roddy Piper, who has just won the Intercontinental title, and he's about to enter the Royal Rumble, and he's dedicating this to his son Colt, who is now an MMA fighter. And I don't believe Colt has ever won a title, so his dad is better than him. We cut back to Sean Mooney in the dressing room, and he said there are some favorites in the Royal Rumble, but there's also some underdogs. And then they pan over, and it's the newly healed Shawn Michaels, fresh off his heel turn that aired 6 days prior on TV. Now, this was the first time that he had been seen in this new gear, this white leather with the hearts all over it. And going back now and seeing it, it's like this is a really toned down version of this heel Shawn. But if you had just only watched rocker Shawn Michaels up to this point, you would have just completely laughed at this. I don't know, but I think it turns out okay for Shawn. He did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, I think so. I was a big Marty Jannetty fan there. And, I loved the Rockers growing up. And when Shawn Michaels turned on Jannetty, I mean, that was like absolute heartbreak for me there. I could not believe that happened. That
was one of those angles that back like in that era, you didn't really see such heavy angles like that. They were all very cartoony, and it's all stuff that's like, oh, that wouldn't bother me, that wouldn't hurt. When Marty, dove through the barbershop window in an attempt to escape from Shawn, that's how I see it. That's how Bobby also explained it. It's like he's such a coward. He tried to dive through the window.
Oh, so Shawn, I laugh now, but that was heartbreaking for me. I mean, that was still like a time I was young enough, going into high school, that I'm not going to say that I believed everything was 100% real. Like I realized there was something going on here, but still, it was like I watch it now with a completely different set of eyes than I did back then, and just the emotional investment that I had, the emotions that poured out when the Rockers broke up because Shawn Michaels did this to Marty Jannetty. It was, it was heartbreaking for me.
God, can you imagine Monday morning, you and me walk into Mr. Voth's math class, our heads are hung low, we're all despondent, and Jeff Atkinson
just distraught.
Jeff Atkinson asks us, "What's wrong?" The Rockers broke up.
Oh, man, all the girls come flocking to console us because it's such a big deal. Wait, that never happened.
Wait, what are you talking about? If we even admitted the fact that we watched pro wrestling, we were shunned and drawn and quartered.
That's why we had to watch it in secret together in my parents' basement.
It was one of those things where it's like, oh, I used to watch it as a kid, and now I'm 43, and I'm embarrassed to say that I watch it still. So the gist of this interview is Shawn basically saying, hey, Marty, you should thank me because I just saved you 29 other beatings. We get another Coliseum home video exclusive with Lord Alfred Hayes, who's standing next to Ric Flair, and Hayes asks him, Mr. Flair, what number did you draw? And just like that, without any coercion, Flair just tells him. He says, well, Alfred, I do number 3. And he just says it with the same intensity as one would that orders lunch. It's like, yeah, this is my number. I'm number 3. I'm going to be there for close to an hour. And again, it's because you're with Lord Alfred. You're a nice, polite Englishman.
I was shocked that he just gave that up. I was thinking, you're supposed to be surprised when everyone comes out. And here we knew, obviously I knew what happened, but looking back at it now, it's just like, Now I know what number he's coming out at before the event even starts.
Well, I don't believe this interview was shown in the arena, so no one in the crowd knew what number he was. So this was probably even recorded after the event happened. So, and they just inserted it in.
Okay.
We then get what was a hallmark of these Royal Rumble events. Right before the match, they have a list of like their top guys, just saying what they're going to do, why they're going to win, and the Repo Man was there as well.
That blew my mind too. It's just like, yeah, you're putting a Repo in here, and he's not going to last very long.
You've got these super popular baby faces. You've got these former world champs. You got Randy Savage. You had the British Bulldog. You had Jake Roberts, who was an awesome heel promo, and then you had the Repo Man that just coming in and saying that what's mine is mine and what's yours is also mine, and I'm going to steal the title.
Repo's gone. Repo's gone.
You had Sid Justice with the classic "My teeth will not separate when I talk" promo.
I actually thought his teeth were going to break. He's clenching that jaw so tight. I just envisioned his teeth shattering and blowing out of his mouth.
The Iron Sheik has had this cult following resurgence because of YouTube, and I'm shocked that Sid hasn't had that same sort of success. I think that Sid would be great for YouTube, but because he was just so comically bad. And all his promos, he would talk really quiet, and then he would yell really loud, and then he'd be real quiet again and come real close, because he's the man who rules the world. We go to Ric Flair.
Voice inflections. It's great public speaking trait. It's just you're using your voice inflections high and low. You got to keep mixing it up, right?
He should go on the motivational speaker circuit. He'd be great. We cut to Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, who calls Rick the man who rocks the cradle. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Neither did I. I was like, what?
I'm assuming it's some sort of sex reference, because, Ric Flair back in the day, he was the nature boy 24/7.
Absolutely.
Everyone always talks about Flair's post-match promo with Gene, put that cigarette out. Yeah. But the pre-match promo here I thought was also great.
Yep.
We get Undertaker and Paul Bearer, who said that 29 body bags are being prepared. And then we get Hulk Hogan. I've got a few things to say about this promo, if you don't mind.
Have at it.
Hulk goes on about being cheap-shotted by one of his so-called friends, so foreshadowing, and being cheap-shotted by President Jack Tunney. What? How has Jack Tunney cheap-shotted you? You've been the number one guy in this company for the last 8 years. You come and go as you please. You work half the schedule that most of these guys do. I'm assuming that this is all real. So this is where all my vengeance comes from. What the hell has Jack Tunney ever done to you? I mean, yes, you were cheated out of the WWF title at Survivor Series in November. You also cheated to win it back a week later because Tunney declared the title vacant. He's the bad guy? I don't understand. And this was when my allegiance to Hulk Hogan was gone, when Ric Flair came, and I was no longer a Hulkamaniac. So, sorry, Hulk.
Yeah, it wasn't much longer. And mine left as well.
So Fink goes over the rules, and Monsoon is just talking over him the whole time. Just let the guy do the announcement. And then Jack the Robot Tunney comes out, and he reiterates that the winner will be the champion. You've never seen a more stiff wooden individual. And I think that was a great quote-unquote character for Jack Tunney, even though he wasn't like a legitimate president of anything. Like he was one of their local lawyers in Toronto, and he just had this persona of the WWF president because he came across as someone that looked like a CEO, just this old wooden man that would come on TV every 6 weeks and declare things.
He was definitely old and wooden for sure.
If you've ever wanted to see a cross-section of what the WWF stance is on steroid use, all you need to do is look at the number one pick, Davey Boy Smith. This dude was so far beyond jacked. As was a lot of guys in this match. And Vince, at the time, was very anti-steroid, because at this point, he was about to be indicted by a federal grand jury on steroid distribution. And most of the guys in this match were on the juice. And so there was a lot of talk of, well, I need to suspend these guys and not have them on my TV program. But then you're going to take 20 guys out of this Rumble match that would have been suspended. Then what do you do?
Yeah. No, Bulldog was another favorite of mine as a kid. That's for sure.
Knowing that Bulldog was on the juice and all of these guys were on insane amounts of pills and stuff, it did break my heart just a little bit. So, speaking of on the juice, they mentioned that Rick Martel holds the current record for lasting just over 52 minutes in last year's Royal Rumble, and that Bushwhacker Luke has the shortest time of 4 seconds, which is actually not true. So I did some fact checking, so sorry, Gorilla, you're wrong.
Oh.
In the 1989 Rumble, the Warlord lasted 2 seconds. He came in and immediately got clotheslined out by Hulk Hogan. So, Gorilla Monsoon, not good at Rumble history.
Maybe that's why they gave him the number they did for this one? The Warlord?
Yeah, it could be a make good. Because that'll make all the difference. So, Bulldog clotheslines DiBiase over the top rope early. So, it's a short night for Uncle Ted. A few seconds pass to build up the tension when number 3 comes out. And surprise of all surprises, it's Ric Flair. And Bobby Heenan loses his shit.
Loses it. This is when the commentary really kicks into high gear.
Now, I remember when this event happened. I didn't see it until probably a year later, but I was following it on TV. And I assumed in my youth that nobody in my circle of friends knew what the result was. So we were jibber-jabbering about this, and there was a certain gentleman, or a certain guy in our class. I won't name names. We'll just call him Jarrett Bramo. And just a random name. And we were talking about the Royal Rumble. And I said, hey, did you hear what happened? The final 2 came down to Colonel Mustafa and Hercules. Just to see what reaction I would get. And this guy, again, we'll just call him Jarrett, looks at me and says, no, you idiot, Ric Flair won. And that was the first time I knew that Ric Flair won this match.
Oh, man. That was a spoiler for you, eh?
It was. So, crowd didn't see the Coliseum home video interview where Lord Alfred gave him the number. The entire arena is just laughing and cheering at Flair's imminent failure, and it just built up to such a great story. And Flair bumps around for Bulldog, which he would do with just about everyone. And I think aside from Ted DiBiase, I'm pretty sure Flair's goal in here was to do at least one spot with every single guy who came in.
I think so. It was impressive, honestly, watching this match. You know, Bobby Heenan, of course, talks about how impressive Flair is and all this kind of stuff, and he's always going at him, always going at everyone, always going in the offensive. And I'm sitting there just thinking from a pure athletic standpoint, knowing what happens, having no emotional tie to this event, worried about what's going to happen, just watching Ric Flair just go and go and go and go, and just interact with everyone. Always moving, never really taking that step back and taking a breather, but just going for as long as he did was really impressive.
Yeah, and one of Flair's trademarks is being able to just have a great match with just about anyone. And, you get some of the guys that Flair would have interactions with, like number 4, Jerry Saggs came in from the Nasty Boys. 5 was Haku. He did a few, each guy came in, they got to do one thing with Flair, and what kind of a thrill do you think it was for someone like Jerry Saggs, who probably grew up watching Ric Flair and say, now I'm in the ring, I get to do, even if it's just a spot with him. That's got to be awesome,
absolutely.
Guys. Shawn Michaels was number 6. He comes down to massive heat, and one of the reasons why I've always loved the Rumble is that you get all these little story arcs along the way. You get the guy who lasts the longest. He doesn't necessarily have to win, but he gets over simply by lasting a long time, so that is part of a story there. You can set up future storylines for WrestleMania. You can always tell how popular a guy is by the crowd reaction that each guy gets as they're doing their entrance. You'll either get a massive cheer. In Shawn's case, you get this massive boo, so he knows that he's already over as a heel. Or, worst of all, if you're someone like, Nikolai Volkov, you get complete silence. So
that's got to be just as heartening as an entertainer to come out and nobody cares.
Right, either cheer me really loudly or boo me really loudly. Just give me some sort of reaction. Yeah. Just validate me somehow. And it was so cool seeing Shawn doing spots with Ric Flair. It was like going into a time warp, knowing what would happen years later with Shawn retiring Flair. Michaels would pretty much popularize the whole near elimination. He would be almost eliminated a bunch of times and just kind of save himself. You didn't really see that a whole lot in previous Rumbles. And Shawn just bumped his ass off for a lot of the guys here. Tito Santana was number 7. Tell your Tito Santana story.
Which one? I probably have a few. I mean, I did see Tito Santana in Morris in front of a raucous crowd of about 30 people. Again, this probably would have been 7-8 years ago. And
that wasn't that long.
Yeah,
so he was probably still in like his late 50s or early 60s.
Yeah, I mean, he came out and he was really trying hard. He was like, talking about trying to get the crowd into it, right? He was really trying to sell this as he came into our convention center there in Old Motown. And like I said, to the 30 fans that were there cheering, I kind of felt bad for the guy. I mean, here's one of I wouldn't say my idols. I mean, one of my favorite matches of all time is Mr. Perfect, my favorite wrestler of all time, taking on Tito Santana. And so here's a guy that I really respect because he was the loser in that match. And so he's in one of my favorite matches of all time. And here he is now. I'm seeing him live years later. In front of 30 people.
Former self.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kept saying Ariba over and over again. And I was like, should I get him a bag of chips? I don't know. But it wasn't working. It wasn't working,
Mr.
Tito.
Santana, can I get you a coffee or an IV drip or something?
He moved better than Billy Gunn did when I saw him there in Dauphin there a couple of years prior. So
Barbarian was number 8. Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich was number 9. He came out. He started immediately doing spots with Flair. And then we get the murderer's row of entrants. We get Repo Man at 10. We get Greg Valentine at 11. Commentators tell us that he lasted 44 minutes last year. He meant nothing this year, but it gives the announcer something to talk about. Nikolai.
And did you know that if he were to go 44 minutes again, he could walk out of there the world champion?
If he repeated his performance, he would be the world champion.
They made a point to say that. I'm just like, is anyone buying that Greg Valentine's going to win this thing? I don't think so.
For the record, I just looked it up. Tito Santana is currently 67 years old.
Okay, so if I saw him about 7-8 years ago, 59, 60, wow.
And he could probably still outwork about 90% of today's roster.
Oh, probably. He was moving good. Like I said, I just kind of felt bad because there was such a small audience there at that show.
Number 12 was Nikolai Volkov. Within 2 minutes, Monsoon and Heenan both referred to Volkov as both a Russian and a Lithuanian. He comes out and Heenan's like, a 300-pound Lithuanian. and then Monsoon's like, it's tough for those Russians out there these days. Greg Valentine applies a figure 4 to Flair, so big pop from the crowd there. Number 13
that was not fair to Flair.
That was not fair to Flair. 13 was the Big Boss Man. 14 was Hercules. And at this point, we get a ton of eliminations. We get Shawn and Tito eliminating each other, and those two would set up a match with each other at WrestleMania. Flair eliminates the Bulldog and the Tornado. Hercules eliminates Barbarian. Boss Man eliminates Hercules. So we are left in the ring with Ric Flair and the Big Boss Man. So would you care to describe the Big Boss Man's elimination?
Yeah, it was something. Okay, first of all, 2 notes on Big Boss Man. First one is, like, he is a caricature physically looking at him. He is a big dude from the waist up. From the waist down, he's got these 2 long, slender-looking legs that he can roundhouse higher, like he put his heel over his head and kick guys in the face. And I'm like, how is this guy doing that? And then he goes over the top rope, and he's pretty much standing on the apron at this point, and he just swoons like so many women when the Beatles came to America, and just passes out onto the floor, and it was a spectacle.
That was the best description of anything I've ever heard.
Boss Man.
So as Boss Man is pretty much eliminates himself, again, Bobby Heenan, Gold Star. Oh, my God, Flair's done it. He's the last man standing. He's the world champ. And Monsoon's like, shut up, there's a bunch of other guys. So there's a brief pause.
I wanted to cheer at that moment. Heenan was just like so excited for life. And, it was like I thought the whole thing was over.
So we got Flair, who's he is owning the ring. He's in there by himself, and the countdown comes down, and it's Roddy Piper. And as angry as Bobby was when Flair came out at number 3, I think he was equally upset that of all the people to come out, Roddy Piper comes out now, and they start going at it. He starts choking Flair. They go out on the floor. Piper runs wild on him. He locks him in a sleeper, and as he's in the sleeper, number 16 comes out, which is Jake Roberts, and Jake just kind of saunters off, and he just sits in the corner, and he lets Piper continue to choke the Jesus out of Flair, and then Jake gets bored and just starts beating up Piper, and Jake is about to DDT Flair, and Piper clotheslines Jake, thus saving Flair. And this leads to another one of Heenan's best lines where, "Thank you, Piper. Thank you for saving Flair. I promise I'll never call it a skirt again. It's a kilt. I respect you, blah, blah, blah."
2 seconds later.
And then 2 seconds later, Piper's attacking Flair. "Oh, you skirt-wearing freak."
It's not a kilt, it's a skirt. Bobby Heenan. Gotta love him.
Number 17 was Hacksaw James Duggan. 18 was IRS. 19, convicted murderer Jimmy Superfly Snuka. 20 was...
Phenom? Convicted murderer? Where have I been?
Yeah, in like 19... Oh, you don't... See, this is what happens when you don't stay connected to this business, man. So, in the early 80s, Jimmy Snuka had this woman, this girlfriend, who, things happened in a hotel room, and this woman ended up being deceased. And Vince McMahon more or less paid off the prosecutors with a briefcase full of cash, because Snuka was one of his top guys at the time. And for like 30 years, it went... there was always rumors, but there was never anything definitive. And then a couple of years ago, some newspaper in whatever city that had happened, they said, "Well, we're going to dig up this cold case." And they did some investigation, and Snuka was found to be guilty. But by the time that he was found guilty, he was like in his early 70s, and he had onset dementia, and he was deemed unfit to stand trial, and then he passed away. So he never kind of got his justice. But anyways, he was looking old here.
Yes.
And he didn't do a whole lot in this match. Undertaker was number 20, and it's at this point of the broadcast that we're reminded that both Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker were given preferential treatment for their number selection, as they were the last 2 WWF champions before the title was held up. So Taker and Hogan were allowed to pick only from numbers 20 through 30. And Undertaker got a bit of a raw deal here. He wasn't able to take advantage of his preferential treatment.
No, I was wondering about that preferential treatment comment. I was so mad at Hulk Hogan. I'm like, why does Hulk get preferential treatment? Ric Flair is coming in third, but you explained that very well. I wasn't aware of that fact.
Number 21, Randy Savage, who at the time was in a very deep angle with Jake Roberts, and he just does this dead sprint to the ring. He was running 1,000,000 miles an hour. This was coming off the angle where Randy was trapped in the ropes, and Jake let his Cobra nibble on his arm. That was another one of those angles that I watched as a kid, and it's like, I've never seen anything this disturbing before, and this was such a heavy angle, and I kind of want to go back to see this type of storyline writing. Savage is attacked by Undertaker, but Savage gets loose, and then he ends up eliminating Jake, and then he forgets the rules of the match, and he leaps over the top rope to the floor, thus seemingly eliminating himself. And I'm positive that someone who was as devoted to this character as Randy was, he probably legit forgot about the elimination because his feud with Jake in storyline was so heated. And so he just wanted to make this very real, and he went after Jake. And the announcers had to cover up this gaffe by saying that the WWF rulebook declares that someone must be propelled by someone else. You can't eliminate yourself.
Yes, I thought that was interesting as well.
So that is a rule that they have since ignored in subsequent Rumbles. Number 22 was Berserker. Number 23 was Virgil, who Heenan said, "Oh, think of all the bags that Virgil could have gone through in the back so far."
Oh, Bobby Heenan, it was so good. It was every moment Heenan just kept the show going.
Number 24 was Colonel Mustafa doing the Bushwhacker March. 25 was Rick Martel, and again, they put him over as the current record holder. Now, During this match, you didn't normally see a lot of heels going after other heels and baby faces fighting other baby faces, but Martel went straight for Flair, and which makes sense because you're going for the guy who's threatening to take your record. 26 was Hulk Hogan, huge pop. He comes in within a minute. He eliminates both Undertaker and Berserker quickly. He was followed by the Icon Skinner. No reaction.
A heavy favorite, I thought, going into the match.
Well, if he should have brought his jar of tobacco or his gator juice or whatever it was that he was what he was drinking or spitting.
Oh, so gross.
You can imagine my shock and surprise when I would learn that before he was in the WWF, he was part of a tag team called the Fabulous Ones, which he pretty much played a male stripper gimmick with a bow tie and glittery suspenders. So once we're done here,
I never would have guessed that.
Once you're done here, I want you to look up Skinner's Wikipedia and under Steve Kern and look up photos of him as one half of the Fabulous Ones. So,
I'm writing that down now.
Okay. 28 was Sergeant Slaughter. 29 was Sid Justice. And then for the number 30 spot, they're doing this countdown. And Monsoon, what a troll here he is. He spoils the last pick and he just says, "No surprise here, it is the Warlord." It's like, why would you ruin that? Like, maybe it could have been a surprise. I didn't remember all the guys off the top of my head. It would have been nice a nice little surprise to see, oh, Warlord. Well, I bet he's going to win. And Heenan's like, well, you never know. And Monsoon's like, it can only be one guy.
Yeah, and then Warlord comes out. I was like, oh, yeah, thanks, Monsoon.
Along with the British Bulldog, if I were to give an award for the pharmaceutical appreciation, it would be the Warlord. Holy God.
That dude is jacked.
This guy was so gassed up. Like, a lot of guys were gassed up, but Warlord was just on another level.
Yeah, just thick with 3 C's.
Sid eliminates Sergeant Slaughter in a dramatic fashion. He slings Slaughter into the corner, and one of Slaughter's favorite spots to do is to go chest first into the turnbuckle, have his head hit the iron ring post, and then fall over the top. And that's exactly what happened. And there was this loud clang as Slaughter's skull met the iron. I thought, that probably sucks. We get a lot more fairly non-impressive eliminations, and our final 4 come down to Hulk Hogan, Sid Justice, Ric Flair, and Randy Savage.
Hold on. Are we not going to talk about Rick Martel having a seizure because he has a heel on each of his shoulders, doing something that causes him to gyrate and vibrate and lose his mind?
I totally forgot about it. I think it was the spot where Hogan tried to choke him with his shirt.
No, it was who was it now? There was somebody on the ropes. Was it Flair? Somebody, and then they had their legs over Martel's shoulders, so basically their feet kind of around the back of Martel's head, and Martel's standing there as if he's getting bit by Jake's cobra, and just vibrating violently. Like, this wrestling move is the most painful thing he's ever experienced because he has another guy's boots resting on his shoulders. And I've never understood that one. What he was thinking there. I mean, what's he trying to sell? I don't know. I never got it.
It was as if that he was being treated with shock therapy.
Exactly, yes.
Sid has Savage in a body slam position near the ropes, and Flair nails Sid with a knee to the back. This causes Sid to drop Savage, thus, for the second time, eliminating Randy from this match. This time it's legit. And then we get this next 2-minute clip, which has been replayed in WWF history about 9,000 times over the years. Hogan has Flair on the ropes. Sid comes up from behind and eliminates Hogan. And Hogan is pissed at this guy who abided by the rules and eliminated him fairly. I mean, what possible sympathy can you have for Hogan at this point?
This is where I think, for me, in my mind, the tide started turning on my feelings of Hogan. Like I said, growing up as a kid, I was just predisposed to cheer for Hulk Hogan. He was the real American, after all.
He stood for everything that was good in the world, right?
Yes, and this absolute hissy fit baby maneuver, where he freaks out and then he grabs Sid's hand, and dude, you're out, and he wouldn't let it go, and that was just. To watch that, to see a a face like him, someone who's supposed to be good and pure and true, acting that way. It was disappointing.
It starts to question your faith in all of humanity. I understand. I distinctly remember, I believe it was grade 5 or 6, or maybe even earlier, because my teacher, I forget who it was, asked us, tell us about who your favorite superhero is. And everyone around the room, it's like, your standards, your Batmans, your Supermans, your Spider-Mans, whatever. And I said Hulk Hogan, and the crowd. The crowd
went wild.
The class laughed at me. It's like, he's not a real superhero. Oh, he's far more real than a guy in, Superman with a cape that shoots lasers out of his eyes, and tell you, we get no respect. And I think you were not alone, because in the original broadcast, the announcers were saying that all's fair in love and war and the Royal Rumble and all this stuff. But in the home video version, Vince McMahon made Gorilla and Heenan redub the entire ending sequence so they can portray Hogan as the victim.
Really?
Because if you watch the crowd, when Hogan gets eliminated, the crowd is jumping up and down there, screaming, they're yelling, they're all happy. The audio does not match this, so it's a clear overdub. So
That's crazy.
Hogan and Sid are jibber-jabbering. Flair comes up from behind. He picks Sid's leg up. Hogan already, like you said, he has Sid's arm, and between the two of them, they eliminate Sid, and Ric Flair is declared the winner of the match, 1 hour and 2 seconds. He is your new undisputed WWF champion. And we get another awesome call by Heenan celebrating, just screaming, yes, 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 over and over again. He's the happiest he's ever been. So
watching the replay again, just like tears are coming to my eyes. I feel like Mr. Perfect there, just watching this, just like my guy's done it. Just so exciting. I knew it was coming, but it was just, it's a great match. I love this Rumble. The ending again too with Hulk, everything is kind of strange, but then just Rick there like on his knees, just sweat drenched, and Heenan going wild, and wow, what a finish!
Heenan leaving the broadcast booth was also a nice touch.
Yeah,
like I said, on this version they show the crowd booing, and I guess they thought that this was supposed to be the start of Sid's heel turn, but because he got such a positive reaction in the building, they're seeing this and they're like, oh well, no, maybe the crowd is sick of Hogan, so. They end the segment with Sid and Hogan nose to nose, with Sid yelling, "I'll kill you!" all the while, Flair is just walking back up the aisle with Mr. Perfect, having just won the championship, and is just an afterthought. And we then get the very famous backstage promo with Jack Tunney presenting the WWF title, and it's a promo that I've more or less memorized to this day, in so much that I've passed it on through my DNA. And my son pretty much also knows this promo verbatim.
It's so good. It is so good.
We'll paraphrase here, with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life. When you were, this is the only title in the wrestling world that makes you number one. When you were king of the WWF, I love it. And then Mean Gene's like telling some camera guy or some tech guy to put that cigarette out.
Put that cigarette out.
Maybe because, 90% of the pro sports I watch is pro wrestling. But this promo resonates with me in such a way, like not just in pro wrestling, but in all of athletics. How cool would it be if Roger Goodell hands the Vince Lombardi trophy to Patrick Mahomes and Mahomes cuts this very promo? How awesome would that be?
I would be in tears, weeping.
Your mind would be
weeping.
Blown.
I mean, I was already crying when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl this year because I'm a Chiefs fan of nearly 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to say your level of love probably goes, family, Patrick Mahomes, and then there's a deep drop to third place.
Well, the family might even say Patrick Mahomes is high on that list.
Well,
yes.
Between March and September, it can be family can be number one, right?
It's close, but yes.
This event, for a moment, made me believe that wrestling could possibly be real. Even though I know that the result is predetermined, the fact that a 43-year-old is going out there... Oh, God, I'm 43.
Was Rick 43 during this event?
At the time, Rick was 43. He looked 73. He went out there, and he wrestled for over an hour. And it was a legitimate athletic feat. And you could hear Bobby in the post-match. He said he went out there for 60 minutes, and he took it to Hogan, and he took it to Undertaker, and he took it to anyone that would come up to him. This show is a tale of two companies. It was a completely terrible undercard, but an awesome main event. But I don't think it really much matters because you're not paying for the undercard. Not one single person bought this pay-per-view to see the Beverly Brothers and the Bushwhackers.
What?
No, I'm serious.
Absolutely.
I'm positive.
The Rumble was just, I've said for as many years as I can remember, the 1992 Royal Rumble is the greatest wrestling event of all time. I think just Ric Flair, Bobby Heenan, just the hour-long slugfest that Flair was in, the finish with him on his knees, is it Heenan leaving the booth, I'm just going to ignore, Sid and Hulk in the ring, get rid of those guys. Like, who cares what's, they're mad at each other. Like, yeah, get back to the promo at the end with Flair. Absolute best spot ever. This, it's worth the money, whatever it costs to go and watch this again, or you can watch it for free like I did. And,
through nefarious means.
The dark web allowed me to view it again. A couple of things that stood out to me. I marked it down because I was interested before the match started, like not for the whole pay-per-view, but just the Rumble itself. I wrote down not fair to Flair, and Heenan said that 12 times during the Rumble. And I also wrote down face fall. The classic Ric Flair walk in the middle of the ring and then fall flat on his face. He did that 4 times in this match.
See, I would have guessed that the over-under on the Flair flop would be a little bit higher.
I was thinking that too. Like when I wrote those down on the top of my page while watching this, like I said right at the beginning, I knew this was going to happen. I would have thought more than 4 as well, but there was only 4. And even the not fair to Flair, like 12. I mean, that's 1 every 5 minutes for an entire hour. So I'd say,
God,
it was said earlier in the show. It was said during, several times during the undercard. I didn't write those down. Just the Rumble itself.
Did you happen to count the number of times Flair got pressed off the top turnbuckle?
I did not, no.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it happened at least once with Piper. I don't remember. I should. See, this is one of those shows where I always thought that I remembered every single spot, every line of commentary, the exact order of every person that came in. I don't know. It's just a glorious piece of video. So, like you said, go out of your way to watch this. The first half is pure hot garbage, but the second half is going to make you appreciate it so much more.
Absolutely, yeah. You know what? I like I said, I hadn't watched this event in quite a number of years, but watching it again now and just in preparation, man, like I remember like every line, so many like wrestling moves, things that happened. I was like, how many times did I watch this like years ago that it's just so ingrained in my memory the way it is.
So that's our review of the 1992 Royal Rumble. I guess it's safe to say that this is a thumbs up show, that you should go ahead and watch it.
Absolutely.
Keith, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate this. I knew that this particular show would resonate with you. That's why I kind of bantied about doing this particular event in the past, but I wanted to have you on the show because I know that it's close to your heart, and you know that it's close to mine. We share this, it's like a kinship between you and I think, and nothing can ever take that away. I think we should both get matching tattoos of the Rumble logo.
Or, just a picture of Flair as he's saying it with his hand by his face as he says, a tear in my eye.
Right.
Just get that photo, like, entire back tat or something. I don't know.
Let's get on that. Is there anything that you want to plug? Is there anything you want to get out there? Social media, that sort of thing?
I have people in my city, that are, people that know me and they find me on Twitter and say, hey, I followed you on Twitter. And I was like, you don't want to do that because all I do is bash every other NFL fan base about how their quarterback is not one Patrick Mahomes. So, you know what? My Twitter handle is @theclanmclean, an old school Highlander fan that I am. I know his name wasn't McLean, but I have a personal connection to that name. So you can follow me on the Clan McLean if you want to see nothing but nonstop NFL talk and basically talking about how Patrick Mahomes is the greatest football player in the history of football.
Possibly the greatest man who ever lived.
Probably, yeah.
Could be.
Most likely.
He's at least tied for second. So aside from Ric Flair and Bobby Heenan.
Absolutely.
On that note, everyone, thanks very much for joining us on the Angry Marks Rewind podcast. Again, follow me on Twitter at RowanUnra. I need followers. I require validation at all times. Any final parting words, Keith?
I just appreciate this. I know we talked about it probably like a year ago, and it wasn't able to work out at that time, and I'm glad we finally got this chance to sit down and talk about this event together. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much for coming on. I'd love to have you on again sometime. Everyone, have a great night, and thanks for joining us.